Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to this meeting. Good morning and good afternoon, depending on which part of the world you're in. We're very excited to be having this presentation this morning on improving the livelihoods of smallholders in Indonesia, the AI opportunity. I'd like to thank Rita Damayanti from the FCDO for supporting us in this research. Her support has been very invaluable. So my name is Umber. I'll be doing the first part of this presentation. I'm the Insights Analyst at the GSMA, and I worked with this research alongside my colleagues Trishna and David. I'll allow Trishna to introduce herself and David as well.
Sorry, still muted. Thanks, Amber. Hi, everyone. Trishna here. I'm a researcher and consultant at the intersection of technology, development, entrepreneurship, and sustainability, figuring out how all these buzzwords really look like in the field and how to improve them. I'm from Indonesia, and in the past 10 years, I've been getting deeper and deeper in these agritech ecosystems. And yeah, through different lens, I've been in NGOs, universities, startup, consulting. And I'm here today on behalf of iSynergy Institute team, which is the local partner for GSMA for this research project, along with Angin. So yeah, looking forward to discuss some insights today. Thank you.
Perfect. And thank you, Trishna. On my side, David here. I'm a French guy who have been living in Jakarta for the last 15 years. I was part of the team on this research on behalf of Anin. We are a bit slightly different we started our company doing mostly investment in social enterprise, impact businesses, tech startups. In that capacity, we've spent a lot of time analyzing and working alongside agri-tech companies from the early days of this ecosystem. And we are still supporting some of them, both equity and loan investment. We also do quite a lot of advisory work, working with different government bodies, UN agency, on different also research, project implementation, usually also in the field of innovation, impact, SDGs, usually covering geographies, mostly Indonesia, but also doing some work in the Philippines, Myanmar, Vietnam, and potentially Timor-Leste very soon, right? So looking forward to the discussion.
Lovely. If you don't mind going to the next slide, Simran. Before I kick off, I think most of the colleagues who are attending here today are from the FCDO, and there are a few externals. For those of you from the FCDO, you likely know us well, but for those of you who do not know the GSMA is an industry organization, and we represent the telecoms and wider communications industry. My role is in GSMA's foundation arm, the Mobile for Development. Mobile for Development brings together the mobile industry and a diverse range of international partners, international supporters for sustainable and equitable development in low and middle income countries specifically. Some of our key themes include digital inclusion, digital financial inclusion, climate adaptation and resilience, and increasingly we are focused on the role of emerging technologies for sustainable development at the last mile in low and middle income countries. So to kick off this presentation, the reason why we chose to do this research and why we felt it was relevant in support with the FCDO is that, firstly, AI adoption is accelerating globally, and agriculture in low and middle income countries is one of the highest potential sectors for real impact. Indonesia specifically is an ideal place to study this because it has a very high smartphone concentration and smartphone penetration. The use of men and women both in rural areas as well is quite high. They also have a quite dynamic agritech ecosystem, as you're all aware, and there are 27 million smallholder farmers who stand to benefit from these tools and from this smartphone penetration. Secondly, there is no comprehensive study as of yet that had mapped Indonesia's AI agritech landscape through the lens of smallholder livelihood. The research that does exist currently on Indonesia tends to focus on what technology can do as opposed to whether it actually reaches farmers at the last mile and improves their livelihoods. And lastly, currently there is an open window to shape the trajectory of AI in agriculture. Investment is currently flowing in, startups are building, then there's a very vibrant startup ecosystem. And the decisions that will be made in the next few years can help determine whether AI will deepen the existing inequalities within Indonesia or help to close the gap. For example, there's the national movement of 1,000 digital startups done by the government of Indonesia, which has supported some agritech ventures through incubation funding and market access. There's also Agriculture 4.0 by the Ministry of Agriculture that aims to drive improvements in agriculture via digital technologies themselves. And in 2023, there was a collaboration with the UN FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization, with the Ministry of Agriculture, where they launched their National E-Agriculture Strategy Roadmap with the aim to integrate digital technologies into agriculture by 2027. So it's a very, very open window for us to be doing this research. Please move to the next slide. Thank you. So what was our process in conducting this research? So to answer the questions that we had regarding how can AI benefit smallholder farmer livelihoods, we used quite a comprehensive mixed method approach. We started with desk research across academic, industry, and grey literature, and we actually conducted 47 key informant interviews spanning across startups, NGOs, farmer associations, investors, mobile network operators, and donor partners, which gave us a really unique multi-stakeholder view of the landscape from all of these different angles. Crucially, we also went into the field, and us and our team visited 14 sites across Jakarta, Bali, Yogyakarta, and Aceh, and we ran focus group discussions directly with the farmers to test these AI-enabled tools and solutions in practice. We also held 2 validation workshops to stress test our findings with the sector experts before we finalized our report. And in total, we engaged around 85 organizations and nearly 200 individuals, making this research study a unique and very comprehensive primary research on this topic in Indonesia. Simran, please move to the next slide. So just to highlight the context of Indonesia and some key statistics here, we'll give you a picture of what's at stake when it comes to farmers. Indonesia is an agricultural powerhouse, you can say. The sector contributes 14% of GDP and employs more than 20% of the population. Indonesia is also the world's largest producer of palm oil and coconut, the second largest producer of rubber, the third largest of rice, and one of the world's top aquaculture producers as well. Therefore, agriculture in Indonesia is very clearly not a peripheral sector in the economy. It sits at the heart of the Indonesian economy and the food security of the hundreds of millions of people in the country. Still, as the next slide I will show, the farmers who are at the center of agriculture often are left behind in sharing in its rewards and benefits. So because they're left behind, 40% of farmers around, they remain financially excluded with no credit, they don't have insurance, and they don't have a safety net. More than 60% of smallholders actually cultivate plots of less than half a hectare, which makes economies of scale incredibly difficult to achieve for these farmers due to this very active land fragmentation that is occurring. Average agricultural wages sit at just $142 per month compared to $195 in other sectors. And compounding this, we have very stretched agricultural extension services in Indonesia with one worker serving up to 5 villages at a time on average. Productivity in the sector is also far below its potential. The rice yields in Indonesia average about 5 to 6 tons per hectare, against a potential of a total of 10 to 12 tons. This is the same for shrimp farmers who are using their traditional methods. Yields are less than 1 ton per hectare compared to over 10 in industrial operations. So these challenges that I've set out here are where AI-enabled agritech can bring last mile benefit, which we will now discuss. I'll pass this on to Trishna, and she will be discussing some of the findings of our research.
Thank you, Amber. Next slide, please. Simran. Yeah, I'd like to begin this part by bringing up the first keyword of this title, right, which is livelihood. Amber has touched a bit about that. Livelihood or impact in the red box we can see here represented by 4 aspects. A lot of time when we talk about livelihood, we associate it with money. So the first 2 impact here, productivity, income, is really established around that. So productivity and income generation, also job creation is something that's really important, of course, for the farmers, but also efficiency. It's really important to see efficiency not only associated with money, because a lot of time it leads to cost savings, but also efficiency that would lead to, for the farmer's point of view, is time saving and also labor time reduction, labor work reduction, which is also important dimension of livelihood for farmers. And the last one could be the most important one, sometimes overlooked, is the climate resilience. And in the farmer's point of view, it's really interesting. Throughout the research, we find it's sometimes not just what the sustainability people talk about, like the health of soil and water systems, for example, but also for the farmers, it's like the way that they can take food consumption for their family from their farm. So, or subsistence, we call it, and also some of them like family land ownership to make sure the farm can continue to sustain and provide livelihood for them and also for the other communities. And in terms of the use case classification, when we want to put the innovation, the technology that would lead to these livelihood impacts, in the research, we group them into these three categories in the white box. We adapt this based on mainly the World Bank frameworks. On one of their recent report, also on AI in agriculture. The first one is the advisory and farm management, including here also the precision agriculture, or the smart farming systems that involve hardware devices and so on. So more on farm or upstream side. But we also see a lot of the off-farm part, which is like the second one in the markets, distribution, and logistics. And this not only include the output or harvest part of the markets, but also the input, because there's a lot of dynamics around the seed, feed, fertilizer, pesticide, and so on in this side. And the third one, the general use case category that we will see throughout research is in the management side of finance and risk from the farmers. And this include their credits, their insurance, and how they manage their cash flow, which is really important when we want to have this holistic lens for smallholders in terms of the use of technology or AI. The next slide, please. We will see what kind of AI actually being applied and utilized in these use cases. So we find four main AI models. The first two ones actually have been long time. So for example, expert systems. Expert system is basically a structured program rules. So the AI is not based on learning through the data. And it's been in the software discourse for a long time. The second one as well in predictive analytics, but this already utilize some historical data and combine it with statistical modeling that can predict some future outcomes. It's also an AI. But the last two, this computer vision and natural language processing would be, I would say, the most transformative ones, because like us also, and also in agriculture, the computer vision that can improve and can utilize image processing, even generate videos these days, is really, really useful and transformative in the development of how we can apply this in the real world. And natural language processing is basically where the AI can now communicate with us naturally, like just another human being, due to the advanced development of language models and so on. One of key takeaways here I'd like to highlight is advisory use case is the use case that have the most AI models. So we can expect it will grow and can continue to develop in very fast pace. Right now in Indonesia and agritech in general, we can still say that AI still in the nascent or early stage. And that's why when we built this report few months ago and until today, even there are so many other developments ongoing. Very interesting to see. Next slide, please. We will show you, because we cannot give all the details, I will encourage everyone to refer to the report to see more details, and a lot of case studies and examples also there. So this one is to show how we develop this metrics this matrix of impact feasibility assessment out of 18 use cases or AI application that we find in Indonesia. Many of them already have some existing AI solution in the field, but in some very different level from each other. Some of them still have a pilot and so on. And it's so important to highlight here is when we add the feasibility dimension, not just to see the impact potential, because like I believe many of us agree, if there is a technology that we only judge them based on their potential impact, it would mean that we forget to genuinely see it as when it's ready to implement, when it's ready to scale or to promote more in the current, the segment or the target user. And in the smallholder context, this is really important to genuinely really judge this feasibility on the reality of the farmer's behavior, the reality of the farmer's load, and so on. So out of all these 18 use cases that we map in 3 different levels, from low, medium, and high, we also set up the time horizon, which is in short term, medium, and long term. And in the report, we recommend 3 main AI opportunities. The first one, the most obvious one, is on the right top corner here under the short term list, which is basically the combination of those 2 dot points. It's the conversational advisory or chatbots, where the farmers can ask question in text, voice, image, and maybe next videos to ask about their pest and disease or any other agronomic questions. The second main opportunity that we recommend in the report is under the medium term in this matrix, which is the alternative credit scoring. And the AI behind this will be mostly in the back end. What is alternative credit scoring means in the farmer's point of view is basically an improve credit approval systems, because previously, even after years or maybe decades of efforts for formal financial institution to provide loans for farmers, the reality in the ground is that they still cannot access them. Majority still require collateral and also require conventional credit histories. And this is where AI can really improve these credit scoring systems. And we can talk about one of the case studies that is in scale that where farmers and other rural women have been benefiting this AI application. But before that, we also want to highlight the third or the last AI opportunity that we recommend in the report, that also touch about one of the most persistent problem or pain points from the farmer point of view, which is the price forecasting. At the farm gate level, farmers, as we know, have been almost always don't have bargain power, we call it. A lot of time they cannot make the price. They have to accept whatever price a buyer or a middleman offer to them. In the reality, they don't even know how to bargain and how to negotiate and how to compare with other real price for farm level. And so the direct impact of the price forecasting can be enabled through AI will be the improved market access to for the farmers. Now let's see the 2 case studies that we can discuss today. The first one, next slide, please, is Pak Dayat. It's relatively new, about 3 years or so. It's an AI-powered agronomist on WhatsApp. Shout out to wonderful team behind this. If you are here from agritech startup Dayatani, and also in collaboration with the NGO and the farmers. If there are 3 key takeaways, it would be this. The first one is because Pak Dayat is communicating naturally like bapak-bapak in Indonesia, another peer farmers, using daily life language of Bahasa, and also now can speak Java, Sunda, which is the dominant local dialect in Indonesia. The second one would be my favorite, especially after going to the field with so many different farmers and different even NGOs, startups, and so on, which is the use of WhatsApp. We don't bring a separate app to them and try to make them download app, install, and so on, but just using forwarding a new contact number, and then they can start using or benefiting from the AI. The last one will also be my favorite because it's rare to find this kind of partnership between an agritech startup and NGO in this kind of model, where Dayatani and the farmers now can continue developing the AI technically and also on the ground socially and so on with all the other partners in their ecosystem. The last case study in the next slide that we can talk about tonight is Amarta. So Amarta is actually a fintech and not yet a start and not anymore startup because there are more of like a scale up now. In Indonesia, I believe they have been more than 10 years growing this rural fintech business, and their AI or the machine learning behind it has been actually developed since 2017 even, with hundreds of variables and of course a lot of technical experimentation, challenges, operational realities in the back. So it's really interesting to see how this also prove that when you target women in rural, in digital, and you give access to finance, through digital enablement as well, it really can improve their livelihoods and also the other communities in the ecosystem in the village. Amarta has now reached more than 3 million rural women in their portfolio. Agriculture or farmers is one of the rising or emerging portfolio for Amarta. And one of my favorite insights also when we talk with the team is their intentional, how intentional is there with the field officer. So even though they built this sophisticated digital ecosystem for digital financial service, but the field officer, how they select it, how they train it, how they onboard, how they approach the rural women and the communities is really, really amazing. I think that's all. I would suggest everyone again to refer to the report and see the other case studies and other details. Handing over to David now.
Yeah, thank you, Trishna. Yeah, it's interesting because even before I joined this research, I think we engaged a lot with Dayatani. We were trying to find a way to invest in them. Very impressed by the quality of the team, quality of execution. We went on the ground to visit them as well. And Amarta is a very small world as well. I think when I landed in Jakarta, it was 2012. It was one of the first company we look at. It was a very traditional microfinance model and very proud to see how they grow to integrate AI and the amount of, I think, capital being disbursed to the ecosystem. So yeah, I think, look, Trishna, I think, explained clearly what is actually working. I think Padayat on WhatsApp, Amarta credit scoring for rural women. But I think there's still a sort of a real question I'm sure everybody is thinking is like, if we have these tools working, why don't we see them everywhere across the country yet, right? And the honest answer is that there's still a persistent gap between, I think, what is technically possible and what farmers actually adopt, right? And I will try to take you through, I think, the gap from both sides, supply and demand, and then trying to see what we think we can do about it, right? So on the supply side, right, which basically represent the people who build, finance, or deliver these tools, I think there's three barriers that keep coming and keep being very obvious during the research. I think the first is really the financing and business model. As we all know, tools carry quite a lot of recurring costs, across the whole life cycle, right? I think model development, data engineering, cloud infrastructure, retraining people, field deployment, ongoing farmer support, etc. Everything, all this has a cost, right? And farmers have limited ability to pay. So sustainability as depended a lot on what we call B2B2C or even B2B2G partnership, right? With agribusinesses, insurers, off-takers who benefit from a better served farmers will finance this kind of AI development, right? So this partnership work, we have seen some example, but they bring usually longer sales cycle and slower scaling, right? Second one is the data infrastructure gaps, right? I think good AI needs accurate, standardized, localized data. And right now, the Indonesian agricultural data is still very siloed across government, companies, cooperative, or even informal record, right? So typically the same farmers is registered multiple ways across multiple platforms, which create quite a lot of data fatigue and make it very difficult to build on clean data set. And this data set, clean data is what the model needs, right? So, and on top of this, some of the data is usually to be hyperlocal because the model trained on one region crops, soil or pest perform poorly, can perform poorly somewhere else, right? So hyperlocal is also very important. And the third one is, I think, technical capacity. I think most agri-tech have data engineers and data analysts, right? But very few of them we have met have data scientists who do the modeling and fine-tuning, right? And as I remember one founder told us, skilled AI experts are simply very hard or very expensive to recruit. And without them, a lot of companies are still stuck in off-the-shelf models, right? Okay. So I would move to the next slide, right? The demand side. If you can switch to the next one. Yeah, demand side, right? I think we are talking here about the farmer themselves, and there's 4 barriers we wanted to highlight. The first one is, I would say, fragmented production. Over 60%, if my memory is good, for our smaller farmers, farm less than half a hectare, right? And on a plot that small, even a 10% yield gain is a small absolute amount, right? And a farmer may decide it's not worth learning a new tool, especially mid-season when time is scarce, right? So fragmentation also make it very, every farmer more expensive, I would say, to reach, and aggregation through cooperative farmers group has been seen as potentially an answer, but many of these groups are not always active in practice, right? So fragmentation has been quite a challenge. Second one is connectivity and device. I would say the good news is 4G reaches quite a significant amount of the rural residential area, I think 90+%. But there is a catch: is only 20% of the Indonesian population is 20% of the Indonesian population is actually still offline, right? Concentrated usually in the eastern part of the country and remote farming regions. And our broadband in Indonesia ranks among one of the slowest in Southeast Asia. And I will say on top of this, many farmers use older phone with limited storage and memory that simply cannot run any kind of data-heavy application or solution, right? The third one, trust, literacy, awareness. I think low digital literacy has been seen as a leading barrier to mobile internet adoption in Indonesia, not only in agri-tech, but I would say across different population, right? And farmers who are used to in-person extensions and peer learnings could be quite skeptical of device advice from a source that they cannot see or verify, right? So that has been one of the barriers we have seen. And the last one, I think we were very interested to learn more, to dive more into gender components, right? Gendered barriers. I think we see that women are too often excluded from the system where innovation spread. Training is attended by husbands. Land is registered under men's names. Extension is male dominated, and this is quite encouraging. We think that the mobile gender gap is smaller. If you look at Indonesia, 68% of women use phones. Women farmers use phone versus 69%. So the delta is only 1%. So I think and on top, women are quite highly active on some application like WhatsApp and other system, right? So quite good encouraging point. Let's maybe move to the enabler. I think this will be on the positive notes, right? After talking about some of the barriers, I think what actually moves these tools from pilot to scale. I think the most consistent enablers we found across, I think, all the interviews was trusted intermediaries, right? I think Indonesia has roughly 700,000 plus registered farmers group, plus a massive network of cooperative, NGOs, and extension workers, right? And I would say Padayat is also one of the example, one of the illustration where we have a startup who build the technology, the NGO, edu farmers who bring the reach and the trust and the funding, right? We don't think things could have been done alone, and I think this kind of collaboration between intermediaries have been quite enabling scale, right? Second one is blended finance. I think blended finance for a couple of years have been sort of a buzzword, but bringing a lot of hope that there's going to be a natural progression from traditional investment to, I will say, more tailored solution to what is going on the ground. So the grants, are funding the model, development and validation, concessional capital for the hardware or connectivity, technical assistant, TA for to fill the skill gap, and equity once there's a credible path to scale. So we have seen this work. I think we have seen one rice advisory tool backed by grants and government, and who deliver basically an extra production per hectare using one of the AI tools, right? The third one is local language, services to local language, and this has been a primary determinant of trust. Farmers who could interact in some local language, local dialect, like Javanese, Sundanese, found the advice so much more relevant. I think, in fact, some of the tools that I would say understood a local language but reply in formal Bahasa Indonesia are usually flagged as a barrier, right? So I think having the services to be delivered in local language was quite interesting for scale, right? And again, I would say looking at genders, I think the power of women's farmers group, what we call in Bahasa Indonesia key WT, right? I think we think that is really an underutilized, high potential channel. We saw women, reaching through their own peers group more consistently, and it showed obviously a higher engagement than those who approach a more like top-down approach. Okay. And then I will finish. I think I have 2 slides left for what we actually recommend, and I will go stakeholder by stakeholders. I think the first one is for donors and investors. Obviously, prioritize the use case that already providing impact, WhatsApp advisory and financial inclusion. Make sustainability, I think, a condition of funding, not an afterthought. Invest as much as in adoption, device, data farmers, upskilling, as in building new tools, and make gender responsive design standard kind of a condition, right? For agritechs, I will say, as much as we want to give them advice, anchor your model in local data. There's a very strong competitive mode there. Design things for WhatsApp first, for instance, with voice and images, not text-heavy apps. Partner with agribusinesses and trusted third sectors or NGOs, organizations. And I would say we saw as well that one of the recommendations was to really offer free access for at least a full harvest cycle, which is long enough for a farmer to feel that I think the value is there before you can even ask them to pay, right? For government, I will say develop agriculture specific AI governance, building usually on the personal data protection law, covering consent, data ownership, and liability. One advice also is to invest in shared data repositories as public goods. And I will say explicitly align the national AI strategy that are usually being developed with smallholder farmers' livelihood, not just food system management. I think we have seen this quite across different countries as well. The food system has been one of the priority, but smaller livelihood has been a bit left behind. Okay. And finally, two more groups. I think we wanted to potentially give or illustrate some recommendation. I think for AI developers and providers, I think do validate your model rigorously before they reach farmers, and communicate their limitation honestly. Test for gender bias, make data consent genuinely clear and accessible, and critically keep a human in the loop for, I will say, consequential decisions like, pest treatment or disease diagnosis, where usually a wrong call can cost a farmer quite entire harvest, right? And lastly, for cooperative and civil society organizations, um, strengthen, I will say, the peer network where farmers really learn from each other's about, both the benefit and the risk of AI, build farmers awareness on their data rights, and advocate for the regulatory framework that protect them, right? And because the thread through all of this is very simple, the technology is the easy part. Um, whether AI actually improves smallholder farmers' livelihood or not really depends on how we design, deliver, and govern it, right? Um, and I will say just we keep the farmers not as a tool, but at the center of everything, right? I think that will be the key message of this recommendation, right? Ambar, I give it back to you. I think on my side, I share most of the insight.
Yes, thank you, David. Thank you, Trishna, for the lovely parts of the presentation. And thank you to all of our attendees and especially Rita from the FCDO Digital Access Program. If you have any further questions, you may reach out to me via email at this address, and you can also download the report. I've also put the link to the report in the chat. We have a bit of time left, about 15 minutes or so, for any questions you may have. You can ask them in the chat, and me or one of the other panelists will be able to answer in the remaining time we have left. But thank you all for your attendance, and we appreciate your time coming to learn about this research. The panelists and I will be remaining just for a few minutes to see if there are any further questions. Thank you for your question, Anita. I'll just read it out for the panelists as well. May I know how long this has been implemented in Indonesia? Well, Trishna has been working in the field for very long, and she's been able to see the rise and fall of many agritech startups. Are there any ones in particular that you were asking about in terms of the AI-enabled services that we were discussing? Otherwise, I think Trishna has been able to see about how long the AI has been involved as well.
Yeah, if there is no specific which AI is being questioned. In general, I think David will really also can answer this from the investor point of view longer than me. Again, like Amarta, one of the earlier one who developed machine learning for their credit scoring, not initially for farmers, but for rural financial service. It's been in the last 10 years. But also we know some other agritech startups, maybe some of them already shut down, but a lot of them has been starting this also around 10 to 15 years in general in Indonesia. David, please add.
Sorry, I was on mute. I would say we started to see, so before it was really like traditional 1.0 type of agri-tech, it could be IoT devices or basic application. And I think in 2018, I think it was a company called Habibi Garden, if I'm not mistaken, that was sort of pioneer. We saw the word AI popping up in the agri space, but I think it's really late 2023 that we started to see AI being most of the deck, I would say. Um, Currently still the case. I think there's still a AI boom. It's pretty rare to not see the word AI being somewhere mentioned in any agri-tech organization, but it's not as I would say a must to have unless I think people have learned their lesson. They are testing and testing really the market. So right now I think AI is still on the day, but it's really tested to see if it's not just like for cosmetic or it really bring value to the solution, right?
Hopefully that answers your question, Anita. If there are any further questions, we do have a bit more time. Okay, thank you, Vijman. A question: what are the downside of this development for rural communities from the socio-cultural and economic aspects? Wonderful. Okay. So, Trishna, you can go ahead if you feel.
Just to start, yeah, because I started this also with touching this through the livelihood dimension, right? So, like many other development innovation, there is some unintended consequences or potential negative impact that it's good for us to also consider. So one of them that is has been discussed a lot in AI discourse would be to replace human, to replace farmers. So that's one of the most popular downside of the AI development that's being discussed. But an argument to that discussion is also there that we don't try to see that AI versus human or technology versus human, but we want to see how this AI enable human and human also in the loop to develop this AI or the technology. But to talk about it in more broadly, there's also so many sociocultural, environment, economic downside that could also potentially happening due to development, due to innovation. For example, if it's more focused on clearing land instead of regenerating land, then it's a downside for everyone too. That's one of the example. There could be a lot of others on that. That's from my side.
Yeah, I guess if I may add as well, that's something I think even in some of this memo we draft, for to make investment, we consider as well the impact of all these solutions. And it's not only AI, I think even before, when we even talk about tech in general for agriculture, I think some of the impact potentially are, I would say, a digital and generational divide, older or less technologically literate farmers could risk, marginalization, or disrupting, established social structure where traditional elders hold agricultural authority, for instance. I think technological exclusion. We look also at all this economic impact. It's not only cultural, job displacement, high barrier to entry for AI, data dependency and privacy, etc. So I think there's a lot of potential risk and downsides, which I think right now we see encourage things that people are more aware and things are being more discussed among, investors, stakeholders, AI providers, right? So, yeah.
Thank you both. The next question is, based on data and your research, what is the AI's impact on agricultural productivity and farm household economic status? I can give a few points to some of the specific use cases that we studied. For example, for Pakdayat, they had a Bertani program, which also included farmer mentoring alongside using and teaching farmers how to use their Pakdayat app. This program in specific showed 12% higher yields and about $830 more profit per season with the combined effect of this Berdani program of mentoring and training farmers alongside using the Pakdayat app. Another case that we mentioned in the presentation was Amarta. They've dispersed loans about 35 trillion Indonesian rupiah to 3.3 million women across 28 provinces, and 76% of these people have reported higher income. For one of the cases that is mentioned in the full report that we haven't presented in the presentation, there is a startup called Tani Bersama Estate, and they use the Internet of Things technology specifically for scenting in the soil, different nutrients and minerals for plants as well. And for this program, they also have the ability to detect pests and rodents in their softwares, and the pests and rodents, rat specifically, losses were cut about below 5% when farmers used this particular. Rise, that was briefly mentioned in the presentation but didn't have its own slide. They are another agritech startup that serves approximately 10,000 farmers in Indonesia. They specifically focus on training alternate wetting and drying procedure for our agriculture farmers, and this cuts the water use for these farmers by up to 30%, and the emissions of rice methane gases about up to 50%. And so these are some of the nascent statistics and data that has been highlighted for the positive impact for farm, household, and economic status, agricultural productivity. One thing that we can note for this is that a lot of these solutions are new and nascent, and there has not been sufficient data that is collected. It's in the process of being collected. So we'll be able to see their impacts as the further agricultural seasons progress to see the success of these agritechs. But these are just the current statistics that do exist. If Trishna or David would like to add anything as well, feel free.
No, I guess maybe it's in parallel of the report, right? I think the data we get looking at doing due diligence on a couple of these companies, some were studied, some not. I think it's 15 to 20% increase in crop yields, for comparing farm using AI-driven, I would say, precision agriculture versus conventional method. But again, this is only on one or two cycles, on not every crops, some are more like horticultural type of crops. So I think time will tell. Probably we'll need another year or two to really see if it's also stable over time, right? As also like using certain inputs can have long-term negative effects. It's the same thing here. So I will say it will take a couple of years, but so far it's quite encouraging to see the ROI of AI in crop improvement, yield improvement.
And one thing that we mentioned briefly as one of the key problems that Indonesia faces is the land fragmentation. So the very, very small, less than half hectare size land plots that a lot of these smallholder farmers do have. The TBE that I mentioned with the rat and rodent detection, they also have a unique model where they consolidate these fragmented smallholder plots into larger management blocks within their software. And this also helps to increase the gains because these plots are managed like larger pieces of land collectively with the farmers. Another thing is that for farmer cooperatives as well, this is why some of these agritech, AI-enabled agritech softwares may be more impactful because the cooperative exists, a section of farmers who are a collective exists, and they're not isolated one-off farmers who are working only on their small plots of land. Even for those isolated farmers, they can benefit from the agricultural advisory services in these chatbots, for example, because of the fact that there are so few limited agricultural extension workers who can come to answer their questions. As we said, one agricultural extension worker for about 20 villages earlier today. So these are some of the considerations we keep in mind when we're measuring the impact as well. We'll give it about 1 or 2 more minutes, and if there are no further questions, then we'll close off for the webinar.
I'd like to respond a little bit on the last respondent from our answer that it's been implemented quite long. I would like to add in agriculture horizon, actually, 10 years is not long. In tech also, I think tech development is pretty still early too. So this recalls one of our insight also in the field when we try to say AI. Like for farmers, they don't recognize AI in that in that same level of our understanding in the urban, I would say. But when we say AI, one of the things that they can recall is the meta AI, because a lot of them use Facebook, use WhatsApp as well. So that's the AI that they know. So yeah, I just want to clarify a little bit that 10 years is not that long in agriculture and also in the tech. So as long as we continue the momentum and also build on what works, I think, again, yes, we need to support the introduction and the promotion of this integration of AI. Again, it's not a separate or a dedicated AI alone. AI is there to support all other innovation as well. Thank you.
I think because there seem to be no more questions coming up, we can wrap up this webinar. If you do have any questions that have come up after this webinar, please feel free to send me an email. My email is on the screen. But we appreciate your time and we appreciate your attendance and engagement with this presentation. And thank you again to Rita from the FCDO for supporting this research with the Digital Access Program. Thank you to Trishna and David for being able to take the time to present on this research today and for all of the help in the research as well. We hope to hear from you soon and are hoping that you will read our report and share it as well and make use of it for Indonesia and beyond wider Indonesia. So thank you everyone for attending and have a lovely rest of your evening, rest of your days, wherever you are.